So Node Nation in El Salvador might be one of my favorite, if not my favorite project in the world. I mean that because
Hello guys, welcome once again to Bitcoiner podcast. Today we're gonna talk about one wonderful project that is linked somehow in El Salvador, but today we're gonna find out about this company, how it worked. We're going to talk about sovereign computing and the thoughts about, I just want to welcome Matt Hill. He's the CEO of Star9.
happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, but maybe we can start the podcast if you can make a quick introduction about yourself, so maybe people that don't know anything about Star9 or you, so can have a little bit of context about yourself.
So I'm a software developer by trade. I have a long history of entrepreneurship. I've been a part of 4 different startups over the last, it might be 15 years now. I'm not sure.
Wow.
But my current project and endeavor is Start9, which is an organization who spends most of our time building a piece of open source software called StarOS, which is a computer operating system. Think Mac OS, Windows, iOS, Android, Linux. These are all computer operating systems, each serving a unique purpose. So there's mobile operating systems like iOS and Android. There are desktop and laptop operating systems like Mac OS and Windows. And some Linux distros are also designed for laptop and desktop usage.
Yeah.
And then there are server OSs, server operating systems, which most people never think about because most people do not run servers. And the primary operating system for servers is Linux, and not the graphical Linux that you would see on a laptop or desktop, but the command line Linux, the under the hood, nerdy, geeky Linux sysadmin Linux.
The backend.
Correct. And that is how you operate servers in the world today. Servers are administered via the Linux command line. And that basically makes them inaccessible to everyone in the world, except for experienced sysadmins and IT professionals. And so what we have done is made a new kind of operating system, a server operating system that utilizes a graphical interface that is accessible to anyone, therefore giving people who do not have advanced Linux sysadmin skills and years of experience the ability to own and operate a personal server, which is increasingly becoming an important thing to do in a world where computing infrastructure is increasingly centralized and authoritarian in nature. So running your own server is the way to fix that, is the way to opt out of the central, privacy invading, censored, expensive, undignified computing system and do it yourself so that you maintain your computers and can use them, but you don't have to rely on third parties who are abusing you in the process. And we make that easy. We make that available to everyone.
Yeah. So for example, I like Apple more than Android, but I don't know. I should be
iOS,
that much. Yeah, but because they focus on privacy, but I still I know the problem, right? That you still are relying on them, and that's the third party. So, but I don't know. I think they are not that private. I mean, they said that when you post on the cloud, I think they have this new program that it's recent that it's all encrypted. I don't remember what was the name, but still, because what I want trying to picture here is that people don't know that a server or a cloud, for example, it's always you're relying on someone else's computer. I mean, the cloud is not, it's a computer.
It's just a computer.
Yeah. And you're relying on them.
Hey, quick point. I just realized that my microphone is not actually recording and it's using the computer audio, even though I have this right in front of me. I can't switch to this unless we stop the recording. So if you want to stop it,
Okay.
The sound might get better on my side.
Really? Wow, but so far it's good. But yeah, we can stop
The
it.
new
Hold on.
MacBooks have good speakers.
All right. Hold on.
And so we're here today gathered in this room with the world ending behind us. But if we're lucky, we have an idea right now, and you have ones that nobody's heard of that could be world starting. So let's get to it. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's it.
All right, we're back with a working microphone.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, most people don't understand how computers work and how the internet works and the role that servers play in the cloud computing paradigm, right? When you travel around and you have a cell phone and a laptop and a tablet, and they're all syncing, you can see your email on all of them, you can see your pictures on all of them. This is all facilitated by servers that you do not control, that you do not own, that are owned and operated by, in most cases, very untrustworthy third parties who are abusing their position of being a middleman of your data and communications. But it is becoming more known. People are becoming aware of this fact and are asking what they can do about it. More and more people are wanting to not have middlemen between everything that they do in their lives. And it's just very difficult to do. It's always been a challenging thing. You had mentioned that you prefer Apple over Google, so iOS over Android, for instance. And that's because Apple, is privacy oriented. Well, Apple sure says the word privacy a lot, but they mean something different by the word privacy than what I mean by the word privacy. Apple means we know everything about you, but we won't tell anyone. That's what they mean by privacy. It's like what a bank means by security. It's give us all your money and we'll keep it secure for you. In a way, you could call that security, but it's not you that's securing the money. It's somebody else, right? When Apple claims to protect your privacy, it's because they have everything of yours, right? You have given them everything about you, and now you are trusting them to keep it safe and keep it private. And unfortunately, even if they mean it, even if they do intend to keep your information private, they are flawed, they can be hacked, and they are required.
They have been, actually.
They are required to comply with law enforcement as well, right? So while hopefully whoever's listening here lives in a country where that's not an issue, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people live in places where it's not a good idea to hand private information about yourself over to third parties because you do not live in a jurisdiction that respects human rights. And so that can be used against you. So the solution is really the same as it is with banks. Do not give all your money to a bank to keep safe. They will eventually default on that responsibility. They will eventually fail you either through incompetence, malice, or coercion. They will fail you. And it's the same thing with data custodians. And the solution is the same as it is. So with banks, the solution is stop using the banks, use Bitcoin. And with everything else that exists on a computer, it's stop using the third-party clouds and SaaS providers and start using your own. And a lot of people go, well, what does that mean? How do I do that? And we say us. We are the easiest way to do that. There are other ways, but they require immense technical acumen, patience, and experience. And we do not. It's easy to do with Start OS.
I want to pause a moment and double click on the terms of privacy because, most people when they talk about privacy says like, no, but I don't have anything to hide, so I don't have anything to fear, right? So, right. But I think that's not accurate because, for example, I remember that when were the U.S. elections, I think, I don't remember when was it, but it was when all the whistleblower about Facebook and the Russian government, do you remember? I remember that even Netflix made a documentary about soberana capitalism and also how they influence with your data, that everyone has a different feed on their social media. I mean, for example, what you see on Twitter is not the same that I see on Twitter or on Instagram or whatever, right? But because it's influential by the information that they have on you, right?
Yes.
So why it's important to, I think, change the concept of privacy nowadays on the people.
Yeah. What you're commenting on are some of the consequences of what happens when privacy is not afforded to people. It can result in all sorts of undesirable consequences. For example, censorship, which is what you're referring to. A lot of people think of censorship as this simple tool of, we don't like what you're saying, stop saying it. That is not really how censorship works. Censorship works in the modern world through a process of algorithmic amplification of certain messages and ideas, and an algorithmic suppression of other information and ideas. And so when your feed on Facebook or on X is full of something, that is a form of censorship, because everything that you're seeing on your feed represents something that you are not seeing on your feed. So if your feed is full of information about how horrible some political candidate is, you should view that as censorship of the other candidate. It's not that the other candidate's information is not available. It's just that you'll never see it because your feed is being flooded with other information. Yeah. So you have propaganda and censorship go hand in hand. And in fact, they are two sides of the same coin. What you are seeing always represents something that you are not seeing. And so if you can flood people with information, then they will be unaware of other information that they're not being flooded with. And so this is a political statement that I'm making, but there's also just lesser, maybe more kind of practical commercial considerations to this, as you mentioned, which is that when you do not have privacy, you open yourself up to, we'll call it kind of tricky advertising techniques, right? So if you're being profiled by every website you visit, and that information is being shared with third-party advertisers, these third-party advertisers can start to profile you and therefore kind of, use your own psychology against you to get you interested in things that you otherwise might not be, or, I don't think that's as big of a deal because ultimately you have agency and free will to purchase products or not purchase products. But I think that the political aspect of, timeline curation on social media, for example, is very dangerous and largely goes unrecognized. The concept of getting yourself into an echo chamber or someone being shadow banned often doesn't even go recognized because it's so subtle. It's so indirect. So yeah, it's not about whether you have something to hide. It's giving away your hand, right? It's not a good idea to tell every politician and advertiser and commercial entity in the world all your cards. It's not a good idea to show them all your cards, right? Sometimes you want to make a statement publicly. That's fine. You go to Facebook, you go to X, and you say something publicly, right? That can and will be used against you. You have chosen to share it publicly. But if you are sending somebody a direct message and you think that you are communicating privately with somebody, and that information is also being collected and used to create this profile of you, that is where the line is. It's private. Communications that you think are private should be private, and communications that you think are public should be public. And in our current system, neither of those is true. Neither of them. Because you could make a public comment, but because of the nature of that comment, it could be algorithmically suppressed. So you're making private comments that are actually public, and you're making public comments that nobody ever sees. And both of these things are the result of central third parties managing digital infrastructure, effectively central third parties running servers that we all use to interact with each other. And the solution to this, again, is to stop using those central servers. Instead of everybody communicating through one giant server called X or Facebook, we should be communicating through an open distributed network of relays called Nostr, right? Like, it is a superior model, period. Just like Bitcoin is a superior model to money and finance over central clearance houses and banks. So
what you're describing right now, since the beginning of the podcast, I know that you speak a lot about sovereign computing, but I want to know if you want to add something about that and why it's crucial in the context of Bitcoin. I'm asking you because, well, I told you before starting the podcast that there's a project in El Salvador that we're going to talk about that then. But that's a small example. But so Bitcoin
is what a great way to start a sentence. Bitcoin is a lot of things, and I'm not sure anybody fully knows what it is yet. But in part, Bitcoin is software that is meant to be run in a distributed network of peers. Okay, so there is no central Bitcoin. There is no Bitcoin company or Bitcoin server through which everybody is working. Bitcoin is a network. It is an open distributed network. And what that means practically is that you have a computer, you need a computer that is running the Bitcoin software. And this makes you a node on the network. You could think of it as a citizen on the Bitcoin network. Like, you belong, you are a member of this network now when you run a node. And all nodes are equal, at least in theory, right? Like, certain nodes can become more powerful than other nodes, but that's usually based on merit, on the amount of economic activity flowing through that node. But it's equal opportunity, right? Everyone can spin up a Bitcoin node and join the Bitcoin network, enforce the consensus rules that they prefer, effectively vote for what they think Bitcoin is, and then use their node to access the network and receive value from the network in a trustless manner. This is wonderful, but does require a person to have a computer that runs a Bitcoin node to get the full use out of Bitcoin and for Bitcoin to be sufficiently decentralized and resilient to attack. That's, I don't want to say hard to do, but it's harder to do than most people are comfortable doing, right? For technical people, they'll say things like, it's super easy to run Bitcoin, to run your own node and connect to it from your own wallet and do it in a secure and reliable way. You just go to the README and download this and compile it here and then click run and then go, and they think that's easy. And I'm one of those people. That is easy for me. But I think they underestimate the lengths that a normal person will go to, to get this done. And it's very minimal. It needs to be very easy. So we set out to solve that problem in 2019 when Start9 was first forming. Our first problem that we were setting out to solve was how to make it really, really easy for a normal person to run a Bitcoin node and to do it in the right way, to not compromise on the experience, right? To not only get them up and running with a Bitcoin node, but to make sure that they could competently administer it going forward. Because it's one thing to, let's say you wanted to run a Bitcoin node. I could come over to your house, and pull out your computer and run a bunch of Linux commands and get the Bitcoin node running on the computer in your house. and then be like, all right, see you later, and leave. And so in a way, I've done you a service. I have come to your house and I've set up a Bitcoin node for you. It's your node. And I even helped you set up your phone and connect to it and all the rest. And then I leave. That's fine. I did a nice service for you. But that doesn't actually solve the original problem, which is that you have no idea how to do that yourself. So if anything goes wrong, which it always does, by the way, right? This is not, it's like any appliance, okay? Computers are not bulletproof things. Software has problems. Updates are required. The internet is finicky. Network connections are finicky. Power can be an issue. There's always problems when it comes to keeping a server online and healthy with the latest version of a given piece of software. It's just always going to be the next problem. And so you have to be able to do it. Because if you can't do it, then you're dependent on me now. All you've done is shift your dependency from one place to another. In order for you to be independent and really control your digital life, your privacy, you have to be competent and able to administer the server. And so we set out to do that. We set out to make it possible for somebody to not only get up and running with a Bitcoin node, but to be able to competently administer it going forward. And that required us building something that really didn't exist, namely a new kind of operating system, an operating system that would enable a person to not only run Bitcoin, to get Bitcoin installed and running, but to run really any kind of software, server-side software that you would run on a server. And so while Bitcoin got us started, we knew right from the get-go that we were building something, we'll call it more broad or general than Bitcoin, right? We were building something that would enable someone to run any piece of software competently, such that they could eliminate third parties from their life, one at a time. You'd be almost like picking them off, right? It's like you use third parties for so many things in your life. We all do, right? We are dependent for digital things, I mean. Text messaging, video conferencing. Like right now, we are talking and using a third-party service to do this podcast, right? To do this conversation. We are using a third party. And I'm not saying that that's always a bad thing. It's okay, right? Sometimes I go out to a restaurant. It's not a bad thing to introduce a third party to feed me. Could they poison the food? Sure. They're not going to. I don't have a strong reason to believe that they have malice towards me or that their incompetence is such that I can't trust them. But we have lots of reasons to believe that in our digital lives, that third party position is being abused. And so in general, the basis of life, in my opinion, of a human life, should be self-sufficiency. That's what it means to be an adult, to be independent and free, is to be self-sufficient and not need other humans to do things for you. That's the life of a child. An adult is an independent, free being. And again, you can't do everything yourself. We live in society, we have communities, we have division of labor and responsibility, which is ultimately a good thing that improves all of our lives. But you want to start from a baseline of, I can do everything myself, and then only selectively include third parties when the value proposition makes sense and when trust has been established. So you're not blindly trusting unknown people who don't have your best interest to do very important things for you. And we don't do that with our digital life. We come in from the exact opposite angle. We say, I'm going to blindly trust governments and third giant corporations with every last piece of information about my life. And then selectively, and at times, I'm going to try to maintain my privacy. And it's like, no, you've already lost. You've already handed over everything. And now you're going to, try to beg Apple to keep your information private. This is a losing battle. And so same thing with Bitcoin and its ability to help you opt out of the banking and financial system. When you run your own server, you can selectively start to eliminate third parties from your life and get back that baseline independence and freedom that a human adult, I don't want to say deserves, but should at least have the opportunity to achieve. And you start with the ones that are the worst. Again, like Riverside for recording conversations like this, probably not the worst offender, right? The worst offenders are Google, Microsoft, Facebook, right? Stop using those first. Like, get those guys out of your life as quickly as possible, and then work your way down the food chain to the less offending third parties. And maybe at the end of the day, after a couple years of, casually, gradually eliminating these parasites from your life, maybe you'll even keep a couple around because they actually serve a strong value proposition. Maybe something like Riverside is actually a good third party to keep around. I don't know. I have not used the software.
Yeah. Well, it's quite good.
Seems fine. It doesn't seem like something they could really abuse in a meaningful way, as long as they're not overcharging for the service.
Accessible, I think.
Yeah. So it seems fine.
Yeah. I want to... Oh, sorry. Do you want to add something else?
No, I was done.
Okay. No, yeah. Because I was thinking about my conversation with Oscar, that is the one that it's running Node Nation. And so we were discussing about how they install the nodes on every public school. So, but first, before dive into it, maybe if you can give like a quick difference, if you can tell the difference, say the difference between running a Bitcoin node and mining a Bitcoin, because I realized that we had this conversation and some people think that when you're mining, you're actually having a node. And so, what are the keys different, and if it is a node necessary for mining or not?
Yeah, great question. We get that a lot, actually. People come in and think that when they buy a server from Start9 and they install Bitcoin and run it, that they're mining. You're not. There are different types of Bitcoin nodes. There are, we'll call them standard nodes, which is when you run your own node, but those can be broken into a couple of categories. So there's pruned nodes, which is where you're running a node on the network, but you're not storing the entire blockchain.
Okay.
You're storing just pieces of the blockchain that you need for your own personal use, but you're not storing the whole blockchain, which means other nodes on the network cannot use you to get the blockchain. So you are not as useful to the network if you don't have a full copy of the blockchain. It's still a full node in the sense that you can use it for your own financial purposes, but you are not of much service to other nodes on the network in terms of initial block download. Then there's a personal node that has the whole blockchain. We call that an archival node. Archival nodes store the whole blockchain and can offer that up to other nodes when they join the network. Some nodes relay transactions. Other nodes refuse to relay certain transactions. So each node is configurable to be to your liking, but none of them are mining. Then there are mining nodes, right? These are special nodes that exist for the purpose of constructing blocks and solving them with proof of work, and then broadcasting those blocks to the network and collecting the Coinbase reward and fees for that block. And so those are nodes, okay, but they are mining nodes. They're different kind of node. So anyone who's mining, actually mining, not just creating hashes, okay? Doing proof of work, so just using an ASIC to create hashes is not mining. You are producing hashes, and you are then ultimately sending them to a miner that is running a node and can construct the block and broadcast it to the network. That can only be done from a node. So there's a couple different participants here, right? There's some people that just have an ASIC that's producing hashes, and they say that they're mining. And I guess that's not a totally flawed statement, but they're actually not the node. They're not the mining node. They're just selling their hash, basically, to a mining node. And then there's people who are running nodes, and they're not mining, and they're not producing hashes. So there's different participants in the network. And yeah, a lot of people confuse mining with running a node. They're two totally separate practices. In fact, you can mine without a node at all by just producing hashes, but then ultimately you need to sell or send those hashes that you're producing to a miner, somebody who's actually mining. And oftentimes these are a pool, so there's lots of mining pools out there. There's solo miners out there. But yeah, hopefully that clears it up. It's just not as simple as some people think. There's different participants in the network.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you pictured it quite well. So, and I'm asking you this because I have people in the audience that have asked me about if I know the project of Node Nation and if I can explain it. But actually, I know that they're installing Node with Star9, and even friends have asked me how they work, but I was like, hold on, I know a bit, but I don't know exactly how they work. So I want to ask you two questions in one. And first is that if you can explain how actually it works Star9, so people can have a context of how it works, because and this is a question from Oscar, so shout out to him. He told me that, can you please ask him to math this? And he told me and I'm quoting, what are your thoughts on initiatives like this one, like Node Nation, studying Bitcoin nodes in public school in El Salvador, and the impact on a student's understanding of Bitcoin and the technology?
Great. I'll answer those in the order you asked them. So,
thanks.
First one, StartOS is similar to other operating systems in its user experience. You're going to see a dashboard, and one of the first things you're going to do, whether it's Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, is you're going to go install things on it that you want to run. So once you get your server set up, which only takes a couple of minutes, it's very easy to set up. Now you have to go install things on it. And one of the things that you can install is Bitcoin. So we don't sell Bitcoin nodes, right? That's not what we sell, and it's not what StartOS does. I think it's worth noting that StartOS is just an open source operating system. You don't have to buy anything from us to get up and running with StartOS on your own computer in your own home. We don't even know you exist. There's no accounts or anything like that. It's just an operating system. So once you get this operating system set up, you go shopping. Go figure out what you want to install on it. Everything is free, right? So when I say go shopping, I don't mean shopping. I mean go browsing. Just look for software that you want to install. Yeah. And one of the favorite things that people install is Bitcoin. And at Node Nation in El Salvador, that is the primary thing that they are using these servers to do, is to install Bitcoin and effectively make the server a node on the Bitcoin network. So the way that you do that is you go to the marketplace, you click Bitcoin, you click install. It takes, 20, 30 seconds to install. And then you set any custom settings that you want for Bitcoin. You configure your node in the way that you want. Most people don't do anything special. They just accept the default standard settings, and they click start. Once you click start, the node will begin its synchronization process. This is called initial block download. You don't have to do anything. You can walk away. You click start and you walk away. And in a couple days' time, you'll come back and it'll be finished. And what it is doing for those 1 to 2 days is your node, the Bitcoin software on your StartOS server, is reaching out to other Bitcoin nodes around the world and asking them for blocks and transactions so that it can get caught up to speed. It's learning the history of Bitcoin, okay? You can view your new node as somebody who's out just learning the whole history of Bitcoin, learning about every transaction that's ever existed. And when it finishes learning, it says, I'm done, and now I am a full archival node on the Bitcoin network. I can now help other people get bootstrapped onto the Bitcoin network, and whoever is using this node can rest assured that I will never lie to them. The node is your personal access and truth sayer on the Bitcoin network. And it, again, takes a couple of minutes to set up, no technical expertise, and in a couple days' time, it's done. And then you use the node. And the way that you actually use the node is from wallets. So there are Bitcoin wallets in the world. Wallets are usually on your phone or your laptop. And what you do is you connect the wallet to the node. And that is a simple matter of just entering the node's URL and its password and clicking connect. And now the wallet, so no matter where you are in the world now, right, you could be on the other side of the world holding a phone in your hand, conducting a Bitcoin transaction, and that transaction is being sent out through or being received from the node that's in your home in El Salvador. There's nobody in between you and that node, no matter where you are in the world. Your phone is talking directly to that node, no matter where you are. And so nobody can stop you from sending or receiving valid transactions through the Bitcoin network because you have this node. If you didn't have that node, you would be using somebody else's node, which in many cases is not, the worst thing. Like a lot of people will let you use their node, but they might not. And they would definitely be in a position to lie to you about a transaction, for example, where you couldn't trust what you're seeing on your phone. You look at your phone screen and it's like, did you get that money? I don't know. If it's not your node, you don't really know, because whoever's running that node could have lied to you and told you that you received money that you didn't actually receive. Yeah. And so that's why it's important to run your own node, and that's how it works. Your second question, repeat the last part from Oscar there.
Yeah. It's, the full question was, what are your thoughts on initiatives like Node Nation installing Bitcoin nodes in public schools in El Salvador and the impact on the student understanding of Bitcoin and technology?
So Node Nation in El Salvador might be one of my favorite, if not my favorite project in the world. I mean that because
support for Bitcoiner comes from Blink. So introducing Blink Fiat, the go-to off and on-ramp Bitcoin service in El Salvador. Simply navigate to the top right corner of your Blink wallet and click on the buy and sell option at the bottom of the screen, or visit fiat.blink.sb. Take advantage of the 2% fee and lightning fast services. Whether you're a first-time investor or an experienced trader, Blink Fiat has you covered. Enjoy quick delivery during business hour with transactions taking less than 1 hour. Don't wait any longer. Continue your Bitcoin journey today with Blink Fiat. This is available exclusively in El Salvador for level 2 accounts. And to upgrade your account to level 2, simply navigate to the menu in the upper left corner and click on account, and you will see the upgrade your account options there. Cuando dejas tus activos digitales en un exchange o en custodia de alguien más, te expones a riesgos de terceros no deseados. A diferencia del sistema bancario tradicional, Bitcoin te permite tomar el control total de tus fondos utilizando tus propias claves privadas. Esto te permite ser soberano y esencialmente tu propio banco. Al tomar el control de tus Bitcoins puedes evitar riesgos innecesarios de terceros. Almacenar tus Bitcoins en custodia de terceros como los exchanges puede exponerte a ataques de actores malintencionados, gobiernos o estafadores que lo único que quieren es apoderarse de tu dinero. El proceso de autocustodia puede parecer abrumador al principio, pero afortunadamente Blockstream Jade Wallet hace que sea súper fácil custodiar tus activos. Las billeteras de hardware son dispositivos que almacenan de forma segura las claves privadas de tus bitcoins y activos de Liquid sin conexión a internet. Las billeteras de hardware aumentan la seguridad de tu billetera porque tus claves privadas se almacenan en un dispositivo especializado que no está siempre conectado al internet. Como te he dicho antes, mantener tus claves almacenadas en un dispositivo en línea puede exponerte a factores adicionales de ataque, por lo que se recomienda usar una billetera de hardware al almacenar grandes cantidades de Bitcoin durante largos periodos de tiempo. Jade es una billetera de hardware no custodial para Bitcoins y Liquid que ofrece opciones de firma simple y firmas múltiples. Yo personalmente lo utilizo para almacenar mis Bitcoins, ya que me siento mucho más seguro manteniendo mis Bitcoins en una billetera fría que en una almacenada, por ejemplo, en mi teléfono. Si estás pensando en adquirir uno para ti, no olvides utilizar el código de descuento de nuestro show, Bitcorner Podcast. De esta forma estarás apoyando directamente el show y además obtendrás un 10% de descuento para la compra de tu billetera fría. Bitcorner Podcast es posible gracias a la ayuda de nuestros partners, así que hablemos de Adopting Bitcoin. Los próximos 15 y 16 de noviembre se celebrará la cuarta edición de Adopting Bitcoin en El Salvador. 2 días llenos de presentaciones, paneles, networking, además del mejor café del mundo. Usa el código HODLSV para obtener un 10% de descuento y experimenta la economía circular de Bitcoin visitando las mejores playas y montañas y probando las mejores pupusas en San Salvador.
I don't have a lot of confidence or hope in the fully adult population of this planet, in their ability to change fundamentally how they think about money and finance and centralized versus decentralized network architectures. It's very tough past a certain age, especially when you are dependent on the system that you understand, to change your mind in these fundamental ways, right? Even look at some older generations right now who who were older when the internet came out. It took them a long time to understand and use the internet competently. And many of them still can't. Most of them still can't, not in any meaningful way. They sort of get by. And part of the reason for that they can do it, is because it was forced upon them, right? There's no option anymore. You have to use the internet in today's society. Otherwise, you are just excluded.
Yeah.
And maybe Bitcoin will get to that point too, where it will force people into it through just sheer dominance and incentives. And maybe it won't. But just like with the internet, the real pioneers and innovators and users of the internet came from the younger generations. They're the ones who understood it, who used it, who improved it, and who live in it. And I think the same is going to be true with Bitcoin. You're definitely going to have some adults and older generations, even from my generation, which I don't think of as older, but maybe I should, who get into Bitcoin and who take the time to understand it and to use it and possibly even contribute to it, innovate. But they're going to be the minority. The vast majority of older generations, at best, are going to hold it as a means of preserving wealth for themselves and their descendants.
Yeah.
But most of the people who get involved are actually just going to be speculators. Most of the older generation that gets involved in Bitcoin is just going to be speculating on it in the same way that they would a stock. They're in it for the gains. They're in it for the fiat gains. And it's the children, I think, who are going to be the actual users of Bitcoin when they come of age. And so, teaching kids, so I'm an educator. I was a private tutor for young children and all the way up through high school levels for many years. For 10 years, I did private tutoring services. It wasn't the only thing I did. I was also a software developer, but I did this for many years. I was also a track and field coach and cross-country coach at my old high school for 7 years. I love working with kids. I have multiple kids. I'm going to have more kids. I love children. I love teaching children. I know it's one of the most cliche things to say, but the children are the future. And you have to really let that sink in. You have to say that a few times and really let it sink in and understand it. And then it doesn't sound cliche at all. It sounds like a very profound and meaningful statement, because it is. Any hope the world has of improving is through the children, not the adults. And so anyone who is taking time and energy and dedicating their lives to educating children and doing it well. I'm not just talking about any public school educator that is passing along the state-sponsored propaganda and indoctrination information to the kids. I'm talking about real educators, people who are raising children to be critical thinkers, to be independent, to have independent, healthy minds, and to teach them to survive in the world that awaits them, right? So many of us were taught to survive in the world of the past, right? I was raised in arguably one of the better public school systems in the United States, which has arguably one of the better public school systems in the world, depending on your perspective. And I was not taught to survive in this world. I was not taught financial literacy. I was not taught about computers and modern technology, right? I was taught a bunch of crap. I was taught how to listen to bells and fill out papers and, do what I was told. Yes, I learned math and literature, right? Reading, writing, communicating. Those are essential tools that I was taught, and I'm thankful for that. But so many practical things were left out. How to survive as an adult, how to pay bills, and what are taxes, and why do we pay them, and why shouldn't we pay them, because we shouldn't, and all the rest. Like, I wasn't taught any of this stuff. And so anyone who does teach children these critical tools to not survive in the world of the past, and not survive as a slave, but to survive as an independent, free-thinking adult in the modern world, anyone who does that has my deepest respect and appreciation. And from what I can tell, Oscar and the Node Nation team are doing just that for the children of El Salvador. They are, I don't know enough about the program to speak how holistic the education is, whether it's getting into, other topics aside from money and finance and Bitcoin. But from what I've seen, at least on the money, finance, and Bitcoin side of things, it's like, thank God somebody is teaching these kids about the finance of tomorrow, about the money of tomorrow, about the world of tomorrow, and preparing them for it, as opposed to hand-waving that and teaching them about how the way things used to be and how they need to learn that. Yes, learning history is important so that you understand how you got to where you are, but learning about the present and the future is equally important. So, hats off to them. I'm a huge fan of it. I have, on many cases, reached out to Oscar and others involved with the project and just said, let me know what we can do. How can we help? Right? Start 9 is a company, but we build open source free software. We are not a typical company. We are an open source software project that just so happens to sell servers with our software pre-installed as a means of continuing our development. And so I would love to see the expansion of Node Nation in El Salvador, whether it means a penny of profit to start 9 or not. I don't care. I would love to see the expansion of that project to the point where every child and student in school in El Salvador was learning about Bitcoin and running their own Bitcoin nodes. I don't need a penny out of that, because I view that as an investment, not only in the future of that country and of humanity in general, but of my company. Just like Apple, back in the day, back in 1980s and 90s, Apple was donating computers, giving them away to schools in America so that children could grow up learning how to use computers, but more specifically learning how to use Apple computers. And guess what? I'm an adult now. I buy an Apple computer. It's an investment, right? So not only is it correct, good, and honest for the kids who are learning it and for the country that is promoting it, but it's also good for me too. I would love to see these children get educated in Bitcoin, and for Start 9 and Start OS to be the team and brand that is helping them do that. I think it's a win-win for everyone. And so I'm here to help. Anything you guys need down there, Start 9 is here to help.
That's awesome. Yeah, I hope that I'm sure that Oscar will see this, because I'm gonna tell him to watch the episode. He always watches the episodes, but yeah. A couple of Yeah, a couple of thoughts about that as I was taking notes because if not, I forget. So one thing that you mentioned, it's quite fascinating, is that talking about public school and how the school system works, it's super fascinating. One of the first episodes ever that I had in the podcast was with Julian Linegar, that he's the CEO of Relay, and we were discussing about this, about how the public system works, and he says the same to me. Like in Switzerland, we had one of the best public system in the world.
But that's a big problem that you're speaking of, the lack of education. So you didn't get it in El Salvador, right? But we also didn't get it in Switzerland. Like in Switzerland, we have one of the best education systems, great schools, great university. But unless you really study business administration or finance, and even then you don't really get a good personal finance education on like what is money, what is savings, how can you save, stuff like that. But even if you study that, you don't get this knowledge. But like 90%, like the majority of people who just are going through the normal education system, they never hear in school about finances in general and personal finances specifically. So this is really a big gap, and that's also why to this day a lot of people don't understand the traditional financial system, and of course then also they don't understand the issues with it. So they don't understand. That's why they don't understand Bitcoin. It really requires a lot of understanding. And that's why it is important to read books like the Saifedean's Bitcoin standard and the fiat standard, because then you realize how broken the financial system is and how important Bitcoin is.
But we had never been taught about what is actually money, and exactly what you said, how to pay bills and how to pay taxes, why you shouldn't pay taxes, etc. Right? So these are the real questions, because then you will understand deeper how the society works, right?
I'm hopeful that schools, I shouldn't say schools, but children's education will improve around the globe with the emergence of a Bitcoin standard and a new understanding of human nature and what it means and to be a human and what constitutes a proper human life. I think there is an awakening taking place on a global basis right now, being led by certain thought leaders and new technologies like Bitcoin. And I'm optimistic that the next generations will not be as blindly subjected to state indoctrination centers, I'll call them, as I was and others in previous generations were. I'm optimistic that we will rethink the educational paradigm and how best to educate children. Now, I'm not like fundamentally against the concept of a school. I think that schools are optional 100%, that people should be able to just raise their children and educate them as they see fit. But if there is a school and you are going to send your child to it, the school should have some principles and, advertise how it approaches education, and so that you can, as an individual, select a school that fits your worldview and what you want for your children. I have no idea what the education system, broadly speaking, is like in El Salvador. I have no idea. I am not in a position to comment on it. The only thing I know about the Salvadorian education system is Node Nation, is that there are at least a few schools that are putting Bitcoin education on the curriculum and doing it in a positive, accurate way. And so I can't comment beyond that, but I love that. And I hope that Bukele and the leadership in El Salvador don't stop there. That they don't stop with just a couple of schools are teaching Bitcoin. That acts as the seed of a reformation of the educational system towards dignity and critical thinking and modern technology, rather than just trying to indoctrinate citizens to shut up and do what they're told.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. So Matt. First of all, I think we're gonna start wrapping up because I told you 45 minutes. I was taking you an hour.
I'm long-winded. I tend to talk a lot, so it's
Yeah.
my fault.
No, don't worry at all. Because for me it could be 3 hours. But I have two more questions to ask you. But well, actually, are not mine. I'm gonna explain you why they are not mine. But yeah, talking finishing the thought about the public system in El Salvador. All right, so let's be honest. Public schools in El Salvador, they have a lot of flaws. Even I was in a private school, and when I was in the private school, I felt that was the minimal level that you should have. I know my education was quite good, but I felt that was the minimum that everyone's deserve to have. So I know that they have improved since Bukele, and because they have changed the scholarship and the entire curriculum, but I don't know exactly the details. I know from the lens of the Bitcoin perspective, because I'm quite in communication with Oscar and also with people from my first Bitcoin and from the Bitcoin office. So I know more or less what they are doing, what they are improving, and it's quite good. It's quite amazing because they're now what we were discussing before, right? That now somehow the kids can actually now ask about what is actually money, why the system works in a certain way, right? So at least they have the option to making the question that, all right, there are two systems, because before we just had one system, but now we have a different system, the Bitcoin and the fiat. And now you have the option to choose which one where you want to be, right? So that's one thing. And I think that they will be improving a lot. And Node Nation, they want to expand. I know that they are working actively right now to expand the curriculum and to bring more teachers to go to schools and continue the project. So I know they are quite fine. Good. Hopefully we will see it. So, Matt, so start wrapping up. Actually, I'm doing this quiet game in the podcast that is the guest that is before our interview have a question for you, and so you can reply it, and if you can make a next question for my next guest. Sometimes I know who the next guest is, sometimes I don't. In your case, my previous guest knew that it was you, so they have a question for you, so I'm gonna share it to you.
Well, before I knew who it was, my question was going to be, what is the best thing that you could do for Bitcoin adoption in your country?
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm doing. I basically spend most of my days in life not only trying to get people to adopt Bitcoin in the proper way, but also to take back other aspects of their digital life and dignity that goes along with it. So I appreciate it, and I'm trying. I'm building as fast as I can. I'm writing code as fast as I possibly can.
And for me, we have a request for packaging elements for Star9, right? Remember, Byron? Someone was supposed to ask us.
It's on my backlog somewhere.
Exactly. And basically what we told them was we need someone to contact us to see how we can help, and we'll make sure that we do everything in our power. And we are waiting for that contact because we don't have an entry point, basically. So I think a direct question for him would be, who do we call, and who can you ask someone to call us, so we can actually make it easier to do. That's it.
Yeah. Very fair. We've had a couple social media exchanges. Greenlight packaged for StartOS, Element packaged for StartOS. I think there's even one other piece of software that people are wanting from Blockstream to see on StartOS. Now, he must be a little out of the loop because we have group chats with the Blockstream team. Like we're like in actually shared group chats with members from that team. I'm in DMs with Adam Back, so we're easy to find if Blockstream is interested in helping us or in just getting their software packaged up for StartOS. We are very available and easy to find through any of our community channels, including the shared channels that we have with members from the Blockstream team. I will, and have already to a degree, made a point of getting them involved. So I'll make sure it happens. We're in a big push right now. Start 9 is in a big software release cycle at the moment where StartOS is getting a major update. So we have not had a lot of development cycles or time to spend packaging services. But after this next version of StartOS is released, I'll be able to spend some time kind of reaching out, doing some outreach, and making sure that all these services that people want to see available on StartOS, including Elements and others, make it there. So it'll happen, and I will make sure that it happens. So ball's in our court. They don't need to do anything, but we do have those channels established, and I'll make sure to use them.
All right. Thank you very much.
There you go.
And Matt, thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. It was quite fascinating. I had a lot of questions, but hopefully I will have you again in the podcast to continue
Anytime.
discussing.
Thanks a lot for having me on. I appreciate it. And thank you. Good luck.
All right. Thank you. So guys, see you in the next week. So ciao.